If you already have an FHA or VA loan, there's a special refinance option designed just for you. It's called a Streamlined Refinance, or for VA loans, it's called an IRRRL. Here's why people love it. There's no appraisal required, no income verification, it has limited credit review, and overall it's just a faster, simpler, lower cost option. In real life, here's what it looks like. At closing, you'll bring your mortgage payment that you would have paid anyway, plus the money for your new escrow account. You then end up skipping that mortgage payment, and then the following month, your new lower mortgage payment kicks in. Your loan balance goes up by about one payment. This is because of how payoffs and escrows work. And typically within 30 days, you'll get a refund check from your old escrow account back. And that's your money to keep, to do whatever you'd like with. So let me give you a couple examples. Let's assume you have a loan amount of about $500,000. Let's assume an interest rate of about 6.75, which makes a payment about $32.9974 a month. And that's just the principal and interest. If we were to drop it to 6.25%, that new payment would be about $31.3246, which ends up being savings of about $167. If the interest rate was to fall to say 6%, that would make a new payment about $3,050, which gives you savings of about $250 a month. And then our last example here is if rates were to fall to say 5.75, that would put a new payment about $2,968 for a grand total savings about $331 a month. So you can see how dropping your rate down even by 0.5% can save you a good amount of money. Now, I admit sometimes when people are looking at refinancing, they think, hey Ryan, this only saves me about $100 a month. Is that even worth it? And here's the truth. If you just pocket that $100 a month, it might not feel life-changing. But if you apply that $100 every month to your principal balance, it can actually cut years off your mortgage and save you tens of thousands of dollars in interest. So it's really not just about the monthly savings, it's about what you do with those savings. Now, whenever I explain how an FHA or VA refinance works, the same questions inevitably come up. So let me run through some of the most common questions that I hear from clients about this refinance. And then at the end, if you want to go even deeper, I'll show you exactly how this loan looks on a closing disclosure and payoff statement so you can see the numbers for yourself, and again, if it makes sense for you. So let's go over some of these frequently asked questions. One question is, hey, I already did a 2-1 buy down, so technically my rate is lower right now. And so the question is, hey, should I just wait till that 2-1 buy down is over before I do this refinance? The short answer is no. If we refinance you now, we can actually get the portion of your 2-1 buy down that you haven't used back to you. That's in the form of a check or even a principal reduction. And since your real interest rate on that loan is actually higher than what you're currently paying, it's always better to do the refinance earlier because then you start to save that money quicker. So don't wait until after a 2-1 buy down or a 1-year buy down is finished before you refinance. Another question is, do I need an appraisal? No, that's actually one of the biggest benefits of doing this type of refinance is no appraisal is required, thus saving you some money. It also makes it so whether your current value has gone up or down, doesn't really matter. Another question is, do I have to requalify with income docs and job and all that kind of stuff? Nope, not with this loan. We don't care about W-2s, pay stubs, any of that income stuff. What about my credit score? So your credit score does matter, and obviously the higher the credit score, the better the interest rate we can get you. But even if it's lower, there's still options for you, especially on these streamlined refinances. One question is, can I take cash out with this refinance? The answer is no. These programs are strictly limited to just lower your rate and your payment. Do I have to bring money in at closing is a question I get. Typically what you'll plan on doing is bring in your monthly mortgage payment that you would have paid anyhow. And sometimes if we're funding a new escrow account, you'll need to bring in money sufficient to fund that new escrow account. But again, keep in mind, if we're doing that, you're going to get whatever is in your old escrow account back within 30 days. Another question is, will my loan balance go up? It typically will rise by about 1 month's payment. This is because of how escrows and payoffs are handled. But again, your principal balance isn't really spiking too high. It's just a timing thing. Another question is, how soon after I buy a home can I actually do a streamlined or VA refinance? And then a follow-up question to this is, once I do a refinance, can I do another refinance again, and how quickly? The answer to all of these questions is after 6 payments, or about 210 days from the date of your first payment. That's the soonest that you can refinance or refinance again. Another question is, how much do I need to save in order to be able to do this? The typical answer is about 0.5 percentage point is where it ends up being about the sweet spot. So your rate has to drop at least 0.5 point. Another question is, are there any closing costs? So yes, you're still going to have your normal title fees, underwriting fees, etc. But in most cases, these costs can be rolled into the loan, so you're not writing some huge check just to refinance. Another question is, what happens to my old escrow account? So remember, an escrow account is what we use to pay taxes and homeowners insurance, which are typically due once a year. But you pay monthly into an escrow account so that when those are due, there's enough money in that account to pay those. When we start a new loan, we have to put enough money in there to fund that so that they can make those payments. but you have an old escrow account that's sitting there. And so once we pay off that old loan, that money then will come back to you in the form of a check within 30 days. Another question is, do I get to skip payments? You don't necessarily skip them permanently, but essentially you get to defer 1 month because of how closing is timed. That's why you bring a payment to closing. So the schedule resets and your new lower payment starts the following month. Another question is, what if my savings are small, like just $100 a month? Again, this can still be powerful. If you keep making the old higher payment on this new lower loan, the extra $100 would shave off years and would go directly to principal. A question on the VA side is, do veterans need to live in the property to be able to do an IRRRL? No, actually the VA IRRRL is the only loan from VA that does not require occupancy. So it can be done on investment properties. Another question, is it worth it if I'm going to moving in the next few years? I would say it depends. Typically it's all about your break-even point. And a lot of times on these refinances, your break-even point is in less than a year. And so if you plan to be there for at least a year, I'd say yes, it's worth it. If you plan to move in less than a year, then probably not. Another question is, what if I have a second mortgage, a HELOC, a solar loan, something like that? So typically we can still do a refinance with those. We just have to do a subordination agreement with one of those people. So as long as they're willing to subordinate, we can do it. So some people are fine just knowing that their mortgage payment is going to come down. Others want to see where every dollar is accounted for. If that's you, stick around. I'm now going to break down a closing disclosure and a payoff statement so that you can see where the money goes. And this is on a real life example of somebody that we've refinanced recently. All right, let me go over this real life example of what we did for a borrower recently. As you can see, they started off at a 6.699% interest rate. So their full principal and interest payment was this per month. Principal and interest, homeowners insurance, taxes, PMI. We were able to drop them to 5.75, which you can see then their new payment was $2308.94. Some numbers slightly changed. Besides principal and interest, you can see that the homeowners insurance was slightly higher than when we originally started the loan, and same with taxes. Taxes were slightly higher also. And in this case, PMI was slightly lower, and that's just because the loan balance was lower than when we first started the loan a year ago. So in this case, the borrower saved $232. Their break-even point was less than a year. And so this definitely made sense for this buyer to go forward with this option. Let me now go through the closing disclosure so you can see the actual numbers here, okay? The new loan amount ended up being $324,526, okay? If you look at page 3, you can see this was the payoff, so $322,068, okay? So it increased their loan amount by about $2,000. You can see the interest rate, the monthly principal and interest, and then there's that $2308 payment that we were just talking about. Their cash to close, another important number, was $4,177, okay? So their mortgage payment, plus a little bit for escrows and stuff like that. So that's ended up what they had to bring to closing. They then skipped that mortgage payment instead of making it, but they did have to, again, come in with their mortgage payment plus a new escrow account. But in this case, and we'll go over this a little bit more in detail, but their escrow balance was about $2,400. So that means they would get a check back for $2,400 within 30 days. So in this scenario, the cash to close is actually less than a mortgage payment if you count in that escrow money that will come in within 30 days. This page then outlines all the different fees and stuff like that. So you have about $750 that goes towards processing and underwriting, different fees that you had for the loan, title fees and different things like that. And then you can see that we had to fund a new escrow account. Then you can see there was also a lender credit here at the bottom that covered these fees. And for some reason the appraisal was showing being charged, but again, there was no actual appraisal being done. So there's a credit there. There's also a credit then from the old FHA loan, which is going towards the closing costs that also covers that. Let me now go over the payoff statement that a lot of people wonder about. So a lot of times what you'll see online is a current unpaid principal balance, in this case of $321,982. But then when we actually pay off the loan, you can see it's a little bit higher. The reason is interest is always paid in arrears. And so when you make your September 1st payment, it's really for August's interest. And so this balance of $322 that's being paid off is for the interest plus the remaining principal balance, including a few small third-party fees. You can see right here this daily interest amount of $59.09, that's the daily interest. So for each day you go into the next month, it's essentially $59.09. And then again, we already showed this number earlier, but this is the escrow account balance. So when they come to closing, they're coming in with their mortgage payment plus their escrows. But again, whatever's in the current escrow account balance, in this case $2478, that then comes back to the borrowers within 30 days of closing. So that's a payoff statement, and that's how that works.